Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Human Perspective. Today, I'm happily going to be talking with Brandon Farbstein. So let me start off by giving an image description. I am a white 74-year-old disabled woman. I have brown hair with highlights and red glasses, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt with a hummingbird, and I'm in the foyer of my husband and my apartment and our office. So Brandon, you want to give a description of you?
Absolutely. I am a 22-year-old Caucasian man, and I am wearing a black polo and have brown hair that is gelled back. I never like to have any hair sticking up. And I'm sitting in my apartment.
Tell me a little bit about your growing up in Virginia, your family in particular.
I'm the only one in my family to have my disability, or really any disability. It wasn't discovered when I was born, but at my 2-year checkup, when my mom brought up the fact that I wasn't growing at the same rate as my sister. But from the very beginning, my parents have been my superheroes and my biggest supporters. And I truly owe so much of who I am to what they taught me and how they allowed me to grow up, because they didn't shield me from the outside world or what other people, maybe their reactions being negative or saying comments that were making fun of me, whatever that might have been. They helped me understand, though, that it was up to me how I perceive the experience and also how I react. So it took a lot of me feeling like I was beaten down and not having a lot of self-esteem or confidence, to them really helping me get the professional help that I needed and advocating with me, supporting me through it all. And really, my entire family has been just incredible throughout the journey of life.
What are your disabilities? When you were 2 years old, what did the doctor let your mother know?
So it took actually about 6 months of quite a lot of testing. I believe it was the genetic lab out of UCLA came back with a diagnosis of an extremely rare form of dwarfism called metatropic dysplasia.
You know, like you, I have a different disability, but mine was also very early and was probably identified before you were identified. And so, you know, as a kid, I didn't relate to disability at all when I was like 2 or 3 years old. I didn't really start seeing that I was being treated differently until I was around 5 or 6. But when you were 5 or 6, you went to school and you went to regular classes, right?
Yes, I did.
And I presume at that point, so for the audience, how tall are you now?
I am currently about 3'9" or 3'10" on a good day.
Okay. So when you were young and you were in kindergarten, you were probably not shorter than the other kids in the class.
Exactly. It didn't become too prominent, I would say, until maybe the second or third grade.
Right.
When the peers started getting taller and taller. And then that's when the teasing and things like that, where I really noticed how different I was from those around me, that became very prominent.
How did that make you feel?
I think I had a sense of resentment that started to build because I so desperately wanted to be just like them and to fit in. And with that, I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. I've always been on a bit of an advanced timeline when it comes to my sense of emotional intelligence. And that has definitely gotten me pretty far, but it's also bitten me in the butt quite a few times when I thought that I was better than my peers, especially at like the elementary or middle school age, because I just had a sense of maturity to me that they didn't seem to have. But it made me very angry.
What were you angry about?
I was just angry at life. I was honestly angry at the world. I was angry at God for me being born. And I had that continue to build and build up until I reached 11.
So what happened to you when you were 11?
I walked in the door, and it was just my mom home at the time. And I said to her, I can't do this anymore. There's no point to me living, and I'm going to go kill myself. And I basically stormed up the stairs and slammed the door to my room, and she was just 30 seconds behind me. But I got a belt and was nearly wrapping it around my neck when she stopped me, and basically we stood there hugging for about 10 minutes. And that really was the catalyst for me starting counseling and therapy and getting out of this really deep hole that I found myself in, and I didn't know how to get out. And so I think by me saying I wanted to die, it was basically saying I just wanted the pain to stop. And that turning point was so huge to really get out of my own way in a lot of the capacity where I was making the experience so much worse for myself because of just the state of my mental health, being so depressed and having this really bleak outlook. And so it took, I mean, essentially being at the lowest point that I've ever been, wanting to die and thinking that there's no point in being me, to getting the help that I needed, but also to discover a part of me that I didn't know existed, which was the fact that I could control my own thoughts and other people didn't need to dictate the life that I lived.
I'm wondering if at this low period of time in your life, whether that also enabled you to begin to communicate how you were feeling to other people.
Absolutely. It gave me the ability to not only express it, but put words to such complicated feelings and thoughts that I perceived no one else could understand or were too large for me to even tackle.
I know that you've attended LPA meetings, and I'm wondering, when was your first LPA meeting?
My first LPA event, I was 9 years old, and it was actually in Brooklyn, funny enough.
Right, of course, yay, Brooklyn. So what has LPA meant to you?
LPA, and for those that don't know, it stands for Little People of America. It's the predominant organization for those with dwarfism. And walking in for the first time to this hotel, I saw so many of me for the first time. And I had never felt acceptance and like, I belong here. These are my people, the people that can relate to me the most, that I don't need to explain how I am living my life. And I mean, listen, we weren't in each other's shoes, but in a lot of ways we could understand each other.
So today, do you align yourself with disability rights organizations at all?
Absolutely, I do. And I recently came out as queer. So I also love to tie the two together and bring as much representation, as much visibility to people with disabilities as possible.
Why is that important for you as a disabled person to be aligned with other groups? And what do you feel you're giving to the disability community as well as getting?
I have gained so much from being plugged into and a part of the disability community. And it's honestly more of a recent thing for me, because I didn't used to consider myself a disability rights advocate or activist, but I definitely had that as a part of who I was, but not an intentional focus. And I don't think I fully understood the magnitude of disabled culture, because growing up, I wasn't really exposed to other people with disabilities other than LPA. There is so much more to be done. And that is what motivates me every day to want to show up in as many ways as possible for our community, with our community.
We're both from the Jewish community. And tell us a little bit about how Judaism has impacted your life
I always went to Hebrew school, starting at maybe six or seven.
I mean,
So though I didn't appreciate it, I was always very annoyed with my parents, especially because even then I didn't have a sense of community, even within the temple that we were a part of. I didn't really find friends there and that sort of thing. But what I did really appreciate is the values that my parents especially taught me through our people, through our culture. We have quite a few family members that died in the Holocaust on my mom's side. So that was always taught at a very young age. I remember understanding the power of family. But again, I never really felt like I was a part of that or a part of the Jewish community in a meaningful way until I think I discovered theater. And it was through the local JCC that
Jewish
had a
Community
really,
Center.
yeah. And at, I think, 10 years old, I was on stage for the first time in a musical. And that was through the Jewish Family Theater that they were doing. And that was the first time that I felt like I was a part of something and I was accepted, I was included, and also I was shining in ways that I hadn't felt like I had before.
So do you remember the production?
It was Oliver.
I was in My Fair Lady, also through my synagogue. So I
I
think
love it.
so we started doing our public speaking. That's very interesting. You have also contributed in many ways to areas that I think are cutting edge. One of them is the work that you've been doing in cyberbullying. And I'm wondering if you could give us a brief bit of information about why you got engaged in cyberbullying. What do you think is so important about this, and a little bit about what it is you're actually doing?
Absolutely. This came about the very first week of my freshman year of high school when I started using my mobility device for the first time. It started with a tweet that included a video of me passing by somebody in the hall. It's maybe a 4 or 5 second video of me riding my Segway. And the caption on that video read, "First person to punt the midget off the Segway gets $5."
That must have made you feel, well, how did it make you feel? I can't even imagine.
That was the 3rd or 4th day of high school for me. So it was devastating. The social media incidents that started coming my way were more and more frequent, where I would get, let's say, a bunch of Instagram notifications and open up Instagram and see that there was an entire account created for the sole purpose of harassing and degrading me, taking not only pictures and images from my own social media, but also my TED Talk, putting it with anti-Semitic rhetoric and Hitler behind me. It was disgusting. But when it got to a place of then receiving death threats from the peers at my school, what started from, I believe, an email I received sophomore year of high school saying, "Midget, if you don't kill yourself, I'm going to shank you in the kidney on Thursday." And I genuinely didn't know if it was coming from the person sitting next to me in Spanish class. And that messed with my head so much. I left that high school environment and continued the rest online. And I said to my parents, "What can we do with what we just went through?" And we had a family friend who was a state lawmaker at the Virginia General Assembly. And she looked at the Virginia law, which at the time was totally outdated when it came to anything social media related. It was all like instant messaging and email and things like that. So we were able to testify, I believe, 7 or 8 times within a 2-year span and got 2 pieces of legislation passed. The first on bullying prevention, which requires school administrators to alert parents within 5 days of any bullying incident. But the one law that I'm especially proud of is the work that we did on social and emotional learning curriculum, where across every classroom, every public classroom in Virginia, K through 12, they are learning about empathy, personal boundaries, and age-appropriate social and emotional learning. And that really stemmed from sharing this story, sharing this experience of being so viciously cyberbullied, and me believing that the root cause of it is truly an empathy problem.
I want to thank you so very much for really being so personal and sharing, I know, very difficult aspects of your life, which at the age of 22, you're really turning into powerful messages. It's been great to talk with you, Brandon, and I really look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Me too, Judy. Thank you so much for having me on.
We won't forget us or try to